Hello, everybody. Obviously not as big a draw as Luke, but we crack on. I'm Rob Smith. I represent DQ&A. We're a technology consultancy. I will talk a little bit more to that later on. I've worked through the years on the advertiser side. I've worked network agency side for 10 years, and I've been an independent consultant for the last couple of years as well. Specialised in programmatic in particular for a number of years and built the trading desk at Dentsu Aegis. But I've also worked across lots of other channels as well, so I feel fairly well positioned to talk about the in-housing trend that we're seeing at the moment and what that means for not only advertisers who are looking to do this sort of thing, but also for their agencies and how that agency world is going to change over the coming years. So my talk is obviously about demystifying that. I'm looking to look under the bonnet a little bit and show you some of the realities of this trend. And I'm hoping I'm going to hit the right button now. Nope. There we go. Right. So anyone who reads trade press titles across the media industry will know that day in, day out, we're being told about this epic rise of advertiser in-housing. There's lots of really interesting rhetoric around it. You know, huge global brands are leading the way. Brands are shifting away from agencies. It's a concern for agencies. In-housing is a threat to agencies. And not only are we getting the headlines here, we're also seeing stats fairly consistently from the likes of eMarketer that are really backing up this as a huge growing trend. 76% of advertiser businesses in the US have in-house their creative arms. 97% of advertisers in the UK have at the very least thought about in-housing their programmatic. But the reality is, there are lots of different degrees and levels to advertiser in-housing. The first thing to really think about is the fact that it's very much a non-binary decision. It's not black and white. It's something that a lot of businesses will have greater capability in some areas than they do in others, and they're looking to deliver this in a much more measured, intellectual and strategic fashion. The reasons for doing this are varied, but they are consistently genuine. A lot of the trade will talk about cost saving and efficiency, and there can be elements of cost saving and efficiencies there, but ultimately there are a lot more genuine motivations that advertisers have, which I'll unpick in a little bit as well. Despite advertisers looking to bring their media and creative operations internally, there are still plenty of roles for agencies in terms of working with their advertiser partners. Anyone in the room who works for an agency will know how much talent lies within that portion of the business. And whilst there will be changes and adaptations to how those businesses operate over time, there's still very much a role for collaborations and partnerships between advertisers and agencies as well. But ultimately what we're seeing is not this epic rise, this huge threat and this deep concern. What we're seeing is actually a real steady, measured growth in adoption of in-housing by advertisers. So I'm going to focus a little bit on creative first. So in-housing of creative has been something that's been going on for much longer than media has, because it's a much more longer established industry as opposed to something like digital. And if we look at the stats here, this is a study that looks at the respondents from a survey in 2013 versus 2018, so it's a 5-year lapse, and we can see that creative is relatively advanced in terms of its in-housing. A discipline like web design and development has seen a 28% shift in in-house operations over the last 5 years. That's quite a considerable number. If we look a little bit at media, specifically planning and buying operations, and we focus in on search, because obviously we're at a search event, we can see that there is slightly less of a shift from a digital media perspective. Now these SEO, paid search are quite mature channels now from a media perspective, and we can see that SEO has seen a 27% shift to in-house over the last 5 years. But paid search, where an awful lot of agency talent sits, has seen about an 11% shift. So we can see that no, it's not the meteoric rise that we think it is that's being reported in the press at the moment. Lastly, the aggregated figure for all media services and media operations that are being in-house by advertisers at the moment, when you look at this in a much more aggregated fashion, over the last 5 years, there's only been a 4% shift. There are only 4% more media agencies who, advertisers who have in-housed their media operations over the last 5 years. So yes, it is a trend. Yes, it's happening more in some disciplines and within some channels than it is in others, but ultimately it's a very gradual and well thought out shift over a longer period of time. Now, we've started to take a look into why this shift has been a lot more steady over that 5-year period. And what's really driving it is how advertisers are thinking about their channels and their operations in a more modular fashion. There's a very clear split within media in terms of channel capabilities, organic search, paid search, programmatic, paid social, etc., etc. But the layers within that as well. So advertisers are looking at not just in-housing an entire channel, they're often looking to in-house modules of individual channels, and that's why the trend has been a lot more steady than what's been reported. And here are some of the modules within channels that advertisers are really thinking about when it comes to in-housing. So the first one, and one of the really crucial ones, is technology and data, which obviously we know really come hand in hand. Advertisers are really interested in getting greater access to technology and getting a greater ownership of their data for many different reasons. I don't think I'm in the right place to start talking about GDPR because I don't want any terrible questions. But in terms of technology, clients want greater control and greater transparency over an understanding of the technologies that are being used to activate their campaigns so that they can understand them and generate greater campaign effectiveness. Beyond the technology and data, you still have to be in a position where you can activate. You still need to be in a position where you have processes in place to get the most out of that technology and the most out of that and the most out of the data that you have. And therefore operations and how you leverage the technologies and how teams and individuals work in terms of processes is an additional module that advertisers are thinking about too. Strategy is obviously really important. I think C-level business people have business strategies, and marketing directors, marketing managers have really clear annual or campaign-based strategies and objectives. And there are an awful lot of strategic talent. There's an awful lot of strategic talent within agencies as well. Strategy is something that, in my opinion, and we'll come to that later, is still something that advertisers and agencies can truly collaborate on. In the wake of the trend of in-housing, and the very last bit of the hands on deck, the people. This is often the thing that isn't necessarily thought about by advertisers when they're looking at in-housing. They're looking at taking greater control of technology. They're looking at being able to activate things better, and they often think about people and the people who are required to operate the technology as kind of the last piece of the puzzle. Well, it's a really crucial part. Now, there's obviously an awful lot of talent in agencies in terms of people as well, and great opportunities for advertisers and agencies to continue to collaborate on that basis too. So these are the modules and the things that advertisers are looking at when they're thinking of in-housing. But this is the why. These are the rationale and the reasons why they're thinking of making this shift and making this change. Now, a lot of the market, in terms of the trade press, will talk about cost efficiency as the main driver, and that is up there as one of the most important elements. But it's by no means the only element. There are lots of genuine advertiser motivations for looking to make this shift, and to focus on a couple. Things like Control and transparency. So we've talked a little bit about that from a technology and data perspective. Advertisers are really keen to better understand how their technologies that drive their campaigns work and get closer to that, so they can be a lot more agile and act a lot more quicker in terms of campaign activation. Something that's linked to that as well is campaign effectiveness. Being closer to that technology, having a greater understanding and ability to leverage it can obviously lead to more effective campaigns. And another thing that leads to more effective campaigns as well is better understanding and being better able to activate on attribution data and optimizing around those true metrics as well. One of the other things as well, from my experience working at a very large network agency, one of the main motivations is cross-channel planning. And you'll find that more live, agile advertiser teams can often work together to better collaborate and better plan across channels, as opposed to vast agencies that will often operate in silos. So there's a lot of genuine motivations beyond that simple cost effectiveness element. And there are a lot of businesses who are in-housing very effectively. And there's a few little case studies here. So Bayer are a pharmaceuticals brand who chose to in-house their programmatic globally. They were motivated by cost saving, and you'll see the result that they achieved within the first 6 weeks was to save $10 million. So obviously they have huge budgets, but 10 million is still a very significant saving. They did this by bringing technology in and by leveraging global deals with their technology and their media suppliers as well. So that obviously had the desired outcome for them. Sky's motivations for in-housing their creative operation were slightly different. What Sky wanted to do is have an in-house team who had a much better understanding of their brand and had a direct line into commissioning editors for shows and things like that as well. But they took a lot of learnings from agencies when they went through this as well, and they established agency structures in-house and the real rigor of how agencies operate as well. And they actually went and pitched head-to-head with some of the incumbent agencies and won internal business. So they weren't just handed stuff on a plate, they won that business on merit. So that's been a really successful initiative for them. And the last one, which I feel is a really standout one, is lastminute.com. So they've been on kind of a 3-year journey of in-housing their performance media, planning and buying. They've been solving lots of internal problems and really honing processes internally. And they made the decision to launch their own consultancy arm on the back of the success they've had from this in-housing, in order to advise other brands who either operate in the field of travel or across other verticals as well. And their consultancy focuses on planning, technology, data, and content. So you can see some of the modules that they've looked at from that perspective. So these are some really big brands who've done it quite successfully. And that's an awful lot of money, big brands, that is being shifted away from that agency marketplace. And we all know the old adage of adapt or die. And it's clear that agencies need to be more forward-thinking and need to start to adapt their models. And there are obviously some agencies who are square in this space already operating here. There are no doubt lots of agencies who have thought about this strategically and are planning for the future and making these changes. But there are, no doubt about it, agencies who aren't thinking about this, aren't prepared for it, and could potentially be left behind if they don't start to think about their model. So this is by no means full of information. It's by no means every single consideration. But here are some of the things that agencies can start to think about in order to prepare for this trend as it continues to grow, and in order to position themselves well to be able to continue to work with their partners and their advertisers as this trend continues. So the first one to talk about is technology. So we touched on it a little bit before. Agencies with greater access and greater hands-on technology will have a greater opportunity to collaborate with their advertisers as they bring technology in-house. If you look at a field such as programmatic, If there are agencies whose programmatic teams aren't built on access to technology themselves, but are actually built on third-party providers, then their capability in terms of technology is a very, very long way away from the advertiser. And if an advertiser looks to bring their own technology in-house, then there's nothing the agency do to truly support that from a technology standpoint. If agencies have access to technology, hands-on platforms, then they're in a better place to aid that in-housing process and support in the long term in an advisory capacity as well. Talent is a very clear one. Agencies often have a lot of layers to them, and I know there are agencies with slightly new models now who offer clients a direct line into the people who activate and run their accounts on a day-to-day basis. Changing this talent model in agencies is a huge opportunity. Not just ring fencing those specialists and keeping them away from the clients and locked behind the client services team, and actually opening that up and starting to collaborate more and starting to share more learnings and helping to upskill the advertisers and the partners that you work with in order to make yourself more of a trusted partner moving forwards. Measurement, I think, is something that's consistently talked about, and whilst all campaigns are measured, I think it's important to start to ask, for agencies to start to ask themselves, are the metrics they're reporting on and how they're managing campaign performance, are those objectives aligned with what the business they're working for, their advertiser, is truly looking for? Are agencies looking to manage and deliver campaigns on a revenue basis, on an ROI basis, on a profit margin basis, or are they purely looking at things like impressions, clicks, click-through rate? The further you are away as an agency from your client's business objective, the less likely it is you're going to be able to drive true effectiveness for them and truly integrate yourselves and be able to work with them moving forwards. And the last bit, which I won't talk too much about, is commercials. The commercial model commercial models for agencies are changing, and it's my personal opinion that if you're an agency with a percentage of media commercial model, your objectives perhaps aren't aligned with that of your client. Your objective is to encourage your client to spend more, and that might not always be the right thing to do for them. So it's something to think about. There are a lot more businesses now who are offering their clients performance-based models, and there's even examples that have been touted recently where I think it's Brewdog's creative agency has an equity share model with their client in terms of remuneration for their creative services. So there's lots of new different commercial models that are starting to come to the fore. But the ultimate thing here is that it's important, again, with all these things, whether it's technology, measurement, or commercial, it's about aligning yourself better with the advertiser's business objective. And here are a couple of examples of businesses who've overcome these potential challenges and who've continued to work together despite an in-house initiative from the client. So the first one's L'Oreal. L'Oreal, I think, across Europe took their advertising technology in-house, but they didn't have the team or the staff in order to activate on that. So they pitched for a different agency model, and one of the WPP agencies won this business. And they work with them in a different way. So L'Oreal's approach to this has been a lot more phased and a lot more tactical. Their agency team now is a more collaborative one, rather than sending briefs and outsourcing. They've got people in their office who are working with them on a very close basis, day to day. Project work that they've been undertaking within this has been squeezed now because they're working in this different way. Any projects that would have taken 12 months previously are now only taking 4 months. And we go back to that early point about agility and about access to technology and in-house teams being able to move quicker, this is kind of case in point for that. And the last bit was that the agency offered them an alternative commercial model as well. So it was a non-commission based remuneration model where they focused on more scope of work, project delivery, as opposed to that commission based model. So that's been really successful, and another example of a big brand who've been able to in-house fairly successfully from a creative perspective has been AXA, and they operate a hybrid model where some of their agency team from the creative side of things sit in their office on a full-time basis. And that's allowed them to shift from annual planning runs to much more granular sprints on a quarterly basis in order to, and has helped them to deliver more reactive campaigns as well. So that on-site collaboration again has helped them to be more agile, more faster paced, and keep up with what is a fast-changing market. So the last thing I'm going to touch on is why I'm qualified to talk about this, and why DQ&A are qualified to talk about this. We're a consultancy business who help both sides of the marketplace. We help both advertisers and agencies, and we offer a platform service, which I'll touch on in a sec, but we also offer a consultancy service as well. So our platform service is about supporting businesses, whether they're advertisers or agencies, to onboard technology, to understand it better, and to get the most out of the technology they pick to activate their campaigns. And we also offer a consultancy service as well. So this can be anything from training to cloud-based development as well. So there's lots of bases that we cover across the marketplace. But our real specialism is within the Google marketing platform. The L'Oreal example that we touched on before, they were a client who licensed the Google marketing platform from us. Google marketing platform, as you'll know, is the enterprise Google ad stack, which includes the likes of Google Analytics 360 and some of the media buying platforms as well, such as SearchLeeds 360, Display and Video 362. These are the real enterprise platforms that advertisers are looking at to build out their in-house operations on. And from a consultancy perspective, we have a model that works for any of our partners, be it advertiser or agency, and in any situation as well. So we operate a consultancy model where we go through a discovery process for our clients, process design and blueprinting, and then deployment and ongoing training and development when we're working with our partners as well. And not only have we helped L'Oreal in the past, we've also worked really closely with Samsonite. So with Samsonite, we work with them to in-house their data analytics and measurement infrastructure across the whole of Europe by onboarding Google Analytics 360 for them. That was a very complex. It was a very complex project, incorporating lots of different markets. But ultimately, what it led to was a 25% improvement in performance across Europe for Samsonite. Quick summary of what we talked about. We've seen from the start that in-housing of media and creative is a growing trend. There's no doubt about it. But it's probably a lot more steady than the trade press will have you believe. Ultimately, what we saw from that the report that I focused on is that there's been in total a 4% shift over the last 5 years to businesses who have in-house operations than those that don't. Advertisers who are looking to embark on these projects, they are not consistently motivated exclusively by cost. Some are, but many aren't. And what we find is that the motivations are often genuine, and it's a lot more about control and transparency and access to technology and data, which will allow them to be more agile and ultimately more effective in terms of performance. As agencies, we should all start to consider how our model's adapting to mitigate potential risk. We've got to bring ourselves closer into understanding of technologies, processes, working differently with our people, and offering up our strategic services in a slightly different way in order to overcome this potential challenge. And lastly, and we've seen some examples, and there's no doubt about it, if there are steps that we take here as agencies to make sure when we move forward and adapt, that advertisers and agencies can continue to win together in the changing marketplace. Thank you.